Welcome. r/Prorevenge. Try to squeeze my dad for his money. Tough luck. He knows money. Apologies for the format, because I'm on mobile yada yada yada. Also, this is secondhand from my father and some words or phrasings may be mistranslated. The background. Back during the 1997 Asian financial crisis, Malaysia was hit pretty hard, especially the small independent banks. The Prime Minister at the time, Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, passed a bill to save the banking economy by having all the larger corporate banks buy out the smaller independent banks. At the same time, he made the One Malaysia home loan policy. Under this, all larger banks that bought out the smaller independent banks must send an acknowledgement letter to the home loaners of their original banks stating the home loan change, and must receive an acknowledgement from their new loaners, be it a signature, physical or digital. The story. My dad never liked how banks can legally rob people. For people like him who works the daily grind, having to pay the bank what is essentially 2 houses worth in interest payments over 2 or 3 decades is just plain wrong in his eyes. He strives to one day screw a bank over like how they screw their customers, a contract. Be it sheer dumb luck, or is God listened to his prayers, and decided to grant him that opportunity. That was what he got. When my dad bought our family's first home, he got a loan from a small bank called DCB Bank. All is well, until a few years later the 1997 financial crisis hit. As the small banks were bought out by the larger banks, many home loaners received acknowledgement papers on their new home loan payment plan and policies by their new banks. My dad for whatever reason never received this. He only knew that his original bank was bought over by the RHB Bank Corporation, and that he is now unofficially their customer. My dad was frugal with his money and God bless him, financially literate. He knew that, if he made a full settlement against his principal loan, he can avoid paying 30 years worth of interest installments. Sometime in 2007, he went to a RHB Bank branch nearby to make a full settlement, and this is how it went down. RHB employer: I'm sorry sir, even if you made a full settlement, you would still need to continue making payments for the interest. Dad: what do you mean? I have a home loan contract under DCB that states I can make a full settlement without paying for additional interests. RHB employer: true, but since you've acknowledged and signed under RHB. Dad: I've never received the acknowledgement papers. I never signed any papers from your bank, and all I have here is the DCB Bank contract. RHB employer: sir, under the One Malaysia home loan. Dad: you have to send acknowledgement letters about the loan transfer. Yes, I know. What I want now is for you, RHB Bank, to produce my signature of me acknowledging the new loan policy for RHB. As of now, my paper with DCB is still valid until you produce my signature. Q1 hour of the employer and her colleagues scrambling around their files and databases trying to find any acknowledgement from my dad about their loan contract. At this time, the manager of the bank had called my dad into his office to discuss this problem. It basically had went from civil to a shouting match that can be heard in the neighboring food stalls. My dad couldn't remember most of what was said, but the end of it was what he could still clearly remember, and to his son, it was probably one hell of a badass convo ender. Manager: I'm sorry Mr. Muhammad, but you still need to make the interest payments, regardless of whether you make a full settlement. Dad: alright. I understand. I'll just have take this up to Bank Negara, National Bank of Malaysia. Let them help you find that signature of mine. My dad had a bank manager at the Bulls now. Rather risking a potential $1 million lawsuit and possibly losing his job, he excused himself to make a few phone calls to upper management, which took about half an hour. After said phone calls were done, the manager approached my dad and agreed to the full settlement without the additional interest installments. To add salt to the wound, my dad requested that they have his housing grant ready within the week, to which they delivered. All in all, my dad managed to secure himself a house, the housing grant, and in the process, screwed RHB Bank of what is equal to $60,000 worth of interest payments, which to a middle-class Malaysian in 2007 is a retirement fund. TLDR, bank's incompetence saved my dad a ton of money in interest payments. Edit, fixed typos and such. I've a problem with fat fingering my keypad. Nice work by your dad. Could you explain why taking this up with Bank Negara would have caused a problem, or why they had influence in this instance? My only guess is they have oversight for all banking, and they would hold RHB accountable for failing to make the notification, failure to get confirmation, and then attempting to defraud your dad by holding his to terms he did not agree to. If this is the case, it sounds like RHB made a business of doing just that. Props to your father for being financially literate. Any other person would be intimidated. I still don't get how they thought that would apply. But then I remember my stint with a bank in India with whom I had a car loan. They had pre-interest added amount, and if you pay back that amount, which ends up being twice the amount of the car itself and then some. It's a very sneaky clause that gets them interest for the times they aren't even lending you money. On top of that, the foreclosure charges were 25% of the principal charges. I ultimately said duck it, put that amount in 26 term deposits, remaining of the 60 months, and let them automatically disburse a day before the EMI. At least I got some interest reimbursed in that way. Honestly, it's so Malaysian. I have heard a few stories where bank/uni/etc has fucked up, and they will always say yes, we fucked up, but you still have to pay. Someone I know gave his passport in early to get his work issued visa renewed early as the last time they delayed/did it last minimum. You hand it in 3 months before expiration minimum. He gave it 6 months in 5 or 6 months in advance, so they could start the paperwork, and then would just need submit it around the 3-month mark. They didn't, and if your visa expires while they are renewing it, there are fines as it's seen as overstaying. Workplace wanted him to pay the fines, even though his actions were meant to avoid that extract thing. I know he was able to get them to pay for it in the end. Love this. In the US, you can get a mortgage through a small bank and they will turn around and sell it to a big bank, so the small bank doesn't have the risk, but the terms of the mortgage are the same, so the only difference for the consumer is who they pay. We had our mortgage sold to a large bank called US Bank. It's still a private bank. Don't let the name fool you. No big deal. I would say the majority of mortgages US Bank has are ones they bought, not ones they issued. Then a year or two later, we had a US Bank employee call us trying to get us to sign up for a checking and savings account with them. No thanks, we said. Why don't you trust us with your money? I see you trusted us enough to get your mortgage through us, he said. No, we didn't, we said. But I see your mortgage, we didn't get it through you. Dude, you bought it off of our lender. We had no say in the matter and don't want to use you as our bank. Bye. Initially, I want to disagree with you that collecting interest on money loaned is a way for banks to legally rob people. It's a business transaction. Of course they need to make money off of it. Otherwise, why would they loan you money? Further, it costs them money to loan you that money. The money comes from somewhere. I cannot say I know the similarities in Asian banking and that in the US. But in the US, that money comes from depositors essentially. That's money you and I keep in the bank. We are paid a really small amount of interest, if any at all, to keep our money there. The bank can then loan out that money and then some, based on the money multiplier. The point is that without the profit incentive the bank has in the form of interest, they would have no motivation to loan someone money to buy or build a house. No one is forcing me to borrow money from them, so if I don't like the terms of the loan, then I don't take the loan. However, what I don't understand is a bank saying your dad would still owe the interest payments, even if he settled the loan. That seems very curious to me. Every loan I've ever had in the US, I've made sure to ask to make sure there was no penalty for early payoff. I'm reading now that apparently some mortgages here do have an early payoff penalty. It would not be the remainder of the interest payments, but a smaller amount, based on some formula. I would never take a loan like that, because I tend to pay off loans early. That all being stated, I said I initially disagreed that the bank taking interest is a way for them to legally rob people, and in the case of a loan that has no early payoff penalty, I still think that. But if they are still able to charge you interest payments on a loan you've settled, then that is no doubt wrong. I'm surprised there isn't a push for reform on that matter. Expat living in Malaysia now. RHB. Actually all the major banks. I'm with Sim, and they are so terrible. They basically offered me a credit card that's a debit card. You can get a credit card, but we will deduct the funds directly from your account. How is that credit? I was first with Maybank, but they have no financial products that are appealing. Low FD rates, no foreign currency accounts less than 30k, if I remembered correctly. If I have 30k just kicking around to open a foreign account, I would just fly home to make an account. Oh, and no fixed rate mortgages. How is that even possible? If the market sucks, then some people lose their houses from interest. I can't understand how locked rate mortgages isn't a thing. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit like. If you would like to see more, feel free to subscribe.